We are all back together, and that means it is the strategy session. Welcome, everyone. As always, I am joined by the one, the only, the man who invented modern politicking, Joe Trippi. Joe, welcome back.
Don't blame me.
No, we blame you for everything. We just don't tell you. As always, the author of Everything Trump Touches Dies and Running with the Devil, as well as the host of the Enemies List podcast. Wilson, Rick, welcome.
How are you, sir?
Good, good. And as always, Stuart Stevens, legendary Republican strategist, has a new book coming out that we'll talk about here, guys, probably next week. But Stu, welcome back.
Good to be here, man. Thanks.
All right, everyone. So it is a busy week here in democracy land. First and foremost, let's spend the evening talking about President Joe Biden. This morning, our friends, some of us over at the Lincoln Project, launched a new ad in support of the president, saying that we do this not as Republicans, not as Democrats, not as independents or people who don't vote, but as Americans. That the choice from our perspective is clear. That you really get two choices here, Rick. You get democracy or you get Trump, and you don't get both.
Both. It's a very binary choice in this election cycle, and the difficulties that Joe Biden has had, not only from his own base, but in penetrating this media narrative about his age and everything else. Those are factors that I think are enormously important for us to look at square in the eye and to go at. And at Lincoln, we've targeted this new ad very much directed toward the kind of persuadable Republican voters. It's not a ton of them out there, but they do exist. And they're very good at communicating with in 2020 and 2022. And this ad is the first step in this campaign. It opens this week in Wisconsin and expands beyond that into other swing states. But it talks to persuadable Republican voters, and we have to break those folks off of Donald Trump in the 2024 election. Many of them voted for Joe Biden in 22 or in 20, voted for Democrats in 22. We need to make sure they don't drift back to Trump in 24, and that's the mission of these ads.
All right, so Joe, let's talk about something that Rick mentioned, which is the president's base voters, the Democrat,
Right.
the individual Democratic voter. Stories out, this week saying, the Democratic donors are staying home, they're aloof to the process. That he's got to make the case again. Everybody's asking, is it really going to be the president? Is it really going to be the vice president? Why is it so hard for not just independents and soft Republicans like Rick is talking about, but dyed-in-the-wool lifetime Democrats, lifelong Democrats, to accept that this is a man who has been successful, has met his moment on several occasions, and is running the country in a competent and confident and decent manner?
Look, I think they all know that, but what I think always happens on the Democratic side is a lot of hand wringing, a lot of just worried about everything, and particularly I think because of the threat of Trump, there's it's just an exaggerated thing. But the thing about the spot though that I think is so important, and Rick's right, it's democracy or Trump, but also let's look at that spot a little deeper. It's about someone who confidently got a bipartisan infrastructure bill passed that's actually being implemented and is historic versus a guy who held infrastructure week every week and it never happened, right? I mean, there's real differences here beyond, it's all about democracy. We know that. And some of these other differences won't matter if Trump's in and we lose our democracy. But there is a real stark choice here between competence, real experience, getting things done. Same thing with jobs. It's light years beyond what Trump created, the jobs that were created under Trump versus 5, 10 times, many more times that created under Biden. Sure, there's been inflation and because of supply chain and everything else, but those are coming down. They spike at times. Why are they spiking? Russia and Saudi Arabia raising the price, holding supply back to raise prices. Why are they doing that? To hurt Biden and the U.S. and those that are supporting Ukraine. So I think this spot really kind of starts laying that argument out and puts it in the context of democracy or Trump, which I think is just critical. And I think, getting it on the air in Wisconsin is really important but we need to get it. I mean, that's the interesting thing. The story, I think, in the New York Times, I think it was that they talk about donors not ponying up and sort of holding back. That's why all of us need to jump in right now and help
Right.
any way they can. We need. I mean, there's other groups, so we need the resources too to keep this ad going in Wisconsin because no one else will do it. I mean, that's the really amazing thing to me since joining the Lincoln Project and helping found Resolute Square is just how really instrumental I think are you guys in particular ability to really reach the people we need to reach with the right messages in a ways that me as a Democrat and other Democrats just don't have that same view of of the sliver of people that are gettable, but you know how to communicate better than anybody else. That's why, and so I think a lot of this is getting the resources out there to do what we do best, or what you guys do best in particular. I get to help and be a senior advisor, but I really think this spot is, and I said that on Twitter today. It's a spot every American needs to see, and we need to help. Get more out there so we can go into other markets.
Stu, something that Joe brought up was Russia, its invasion and continuing brutal attacks on a daily basis against Ukraine. The president and President Zelensky of Ukraine were at the UN today. And one thing that Joe noted was, infrastructure, his support for NATO, his support for Ukraine. But those things are really downstream of belief and behavior. So what is where Biden is in these remarks and his actions? Like, what does that tell you about him as a president first, but as a leader second?
Well, look, Biden is in an American tradition, and we really only have one party now that is in that American tradition. And, we've talked about this before. The idea that the group of, in politics in America, that was the greatest antagonist of the Soviet Union, Republican Party, more conservative elements of the Republican Party, for decades, and against Russia, has now become home of the pro-Putin movement. And I think there's really two things at work here. One, we don't talk about it enough. There's a simple fact pattern that the Russians, they wanted Donald Trump. They got Donald Trump. And what did they get? Well, it turns out they got a lot. The three leading candidates for the nomination, Trump, DeSantis, and Ramaswamy, they're pro-Putin candidates. They have promised to so-called end the war. Well, you can end the war if you're willing to accept genocide, if you're willing to accept that one brutal neighbor can invade another. That's really pretty amazing. And the other thing is we also don't talk enough about is that there is this mythical image of Russia that is very much the sort of mythical image that a lot of the MAGA people have for what America should be. It's run by white men. As Putin says, there are no gays in Russia. There are sham elections. There is not really a problem with dissent or freedom of the press. And that is very close. They all say they're Christians. This is very close to what DeSantis would like in Florida. And they rewrite history such that you can create these myths, this myth of a greater Russia, this myth of an America where slavery was a Botech program that DeSantis has been pushing. And I think that there's a real unity in this. And it's really a sort of choice that we've really never had before.
So, Rick, Stuart worked for Senator Mitt Romney when he ran for president. And when Senator Romney was announcing that he wouldn't be standing for re-election next year, one of the quotes that was pulled out of his interview was, "Most of my party doesn't believe in the Constitution anymore."
Sure.
And I was on the phone with some friends of ours last week, and they were, I was expressing to them how we were going to go all in for the current president. And that from our perspective, as you said, it was a binary choice. And they said, well, our friends, these are soft Republicans, maybe erstwhile Republicans. And I said, with all due respect, you and your friends have no electoral power whatsoever in this GOP.
Right.
It is
None.
gone. So now here we are, Rick, 8+ years from the first moment that you waved the flag and said, this is bad, guys, and we're still friggin' here.
Look, when you look at the chaos that surrounds everything in the Republican Party, there was a great tweet thread today on an account that's called The Intellectualist that broke down just how badly damaged all the state Republican parties are because they devoted every bit of their energy to Trump, not to voter registration, not to electing people. It's all about Trump. You look at the chaos in the House of Representatives right now, where Kevin McCarthy is being led around on a leash like a trained animal by crazies on the defense bill, losing a major vote today on the defense bill. He's about to lose a vote on keeping the government open. He's going to lose his seat if he makes that vote on keeping the government open. The chaos is now the brand. The nihilism and the destruction and the revenge fantasies and all the lunacy, that's what's left. There's no party. You can't put the paddles on the chest of this thing and bring it back. It's a zombie party. It's been eaten from the inside out like a parasite eats an animal from the inside out. And the skin of it, the branding of it is still there, but there's no Republican Party left. It is an authoritarian movement devoted to a set of un-American ideals. Look, you've got leading candidates, including Ramaswamy, DeSantis, and others, and who are actively talking about just unwinding parts of the Constitution they don't like. They're just going to get rid of the 14th Amendment. They just don't like it. They don't want birthright citizenship. They're just going to get rid of, parts of the First Amendment because they want to regulate the press. They have a vision of this country that is so fundamentally un-American that if we weren't so numb to it as a country after 8 years of having the Bannon-esque zone flooding of shit, we'd be shocked. We'd be horrified. But Reed, it's like a lot of parts of our society have not learned yet. The people who still want to bring back the old Republican Party, they have not learned. You can't focus group your way out of it. There's no magical phrase you can use to MAGAs that's where they wake up and go, "Oh my God, I've been in a trance. I never realized what I was doing." There's no electoral coalition for the Chris Christies or the Asa Hutchinsons or the Will Hurds of the world. It doesn't exist. There's no there there.
But
So, Joe, go ahead,
yeah, I
Joe.
was just going to say that same thing is happening with Democratic donors and a lot of activists out there that that are still of the hope he'll be in jail or that one of the maybe he'll get beat, somebody will pop and Sununu will endorse them and and they'll be off to the races against
right
them. And so it's the same thing. It's sort of this such a strong normalcy bias that's why I think it's so important for the grassroots out there from the bottom up who get this and those are people who follow Lincoln Project and other groups out there and are tuned in here.
Right.
But we're at the tip of the spear to stop this thing because everybody else is going to sit back for a while. And somebody needs to get out there now and start pounding on this contrast between Biden and Trump in a way that pits the contrast that you guys are leading on.
So, Stuart, let's extend on that a little bit. You said, oh gosh, 2 years ago plus now, that one of the things that we didn't learn from 2016 was that we always need to have a very vivid imagination politically in this country. That it was a failure. Trump's election the first time was a failure of imagination. He almost got reelected in 2020. We forget that. We seem to be back in the same trap. It's not 2016 all over again, right? We should say that. Are there similarities? Sure, but it's not the same thing. But how do you tell people politely, whether or not that's senior political leaders, the media, donors, get your shit together?
Yeah, this is always a problem. The difficulty with the unimaginable is it's difficult to imagine. And when you look at autocrats, their ability to take democracies and transition them to autocracy is always using the tools of democracy.
Right.
So their freedom of speech, their ability to say whatever they want to say. It is a language problem to a large degree, and it's something we all struggle with because how do you talk about this without sounding alarmist? But I think that that language battle is really sort of the ground zero of this battle. You should talk about Biden as a great president. He has been a great president. You shouldn't say he's okay. He's done okay. He's been a great president.
Right.
They need to start talking about. We need to start talking about what it is that Trump says that he will do. They're not quiet about this. Put it out in paper. They're going
Sure.
to destroy the civil service, end the civil service. They're right now. Leonard Leo is out there with a dedicated $1.6 billion dollar funded plan to change how we vote in America.
Yep.
And I think that you have to live in two realities at the same time. You have to live in one that you're hopeful and you believe in America and you believe that America can continue. And you have to live in a world in which you believe that that might not happen. And America is the world's oldest functioning democracy, which is both encouraging and terrifying. What happened to the others? And I think that's really the challenge. And what the press struggles with, I think, is this reversion, if you talk about it, to normalcy. Why
Yep.
isn't Joe Biden at 50%? Most, incumbents are. Not looking at the fact that the majority of the other party doesn't believe he's a legally elected president, which hasn't happened
Mhm.
before. And it's a huge challenge. And honestly, I don't think any of us can say how it ends up.
So, Rick, to extend on something that Stuart said and touch on something that Joe said by inference is
Right.
this idea that so many people, especially in the elite, let's call it the Acela corridor,
Sure.
they all hedge, right? There's always equivocation.
Mm-hmm.
No one's willing to say this is where we're going to go and let's go here. They're always going to drive about 32 miles an hour in the exit lane, right? Hoping to God that if they need to, they can take the exit ramp. But there's really only one exit ramp here. It's way down the road, and you got to drive pretty hard, pretty fast to get there. And so much, as Stu noted, that, Stuart said this a lot, right? You can't tell two sides of a lie. Yet we see, Kristen Welker and Meet the Press, they do
Yeah.
this. They know they're doing it, right? This isn't a secret. Now you see sort of everybody circling the wagons because that's what the press will do. But at some point, whether or not it's the press or the political elite, frankly, of both parties, because the establishment and Republicans still want rid of Trump. Why don't they get it? I mean, if establishment Republicans, Rick, really wanted their party back, they'd all say no one should vote for Donald Trump. Not one person should
Right.
vote for them.
And look, that's the fundamental lie of a lot of the Never Trump movement. A lot of people doing great work, but at the same time, when they're falling asleep at night, they think, "Ooh, that Glenn Youngkin is dreamy. Maybe he'll save us." They keep having this magical thinking that either there's some message you can test in a poll or a focus group, or some candidate who will break the spell. And what have we learned in the last 8 years? The MAGA base embraces Trump because he allows them to be monsters. He allows them to be the most terrible iteration of themselves. He allows them to, as one guy in a focus group I saw in 2016 laughing about it when he thought the camera was off, he was basically saying, nah, now we can say the N word in so many words. And it's just that kind of darkness that, Hillary Clinton took a huge amount of shit for saying it was a basket of deplorables. But deplorable is too weak of a word. They want the crack of Trump. They want the methamphetamine of Trumpism because it lets them be terrible people. It lets them take all their racial animus and all their hatreds and all their imaginary oppressions out on other Americans. And so none of these other people offer that drug, and they never will. When Trump dies, Donald Trump Jr. will dynastically take on the role of asshole in chief of the MAGA movement. This is not like an American
Well,
democracy. And I think that's something people have to realize. There's no fixing this short of absolutely defeating him over and over and breaking his movement and driving every vestige of him from the political space. And that's a work longer than we're going to be around,
and,
honestly.
Well, and Joe, this is one thing I wanted to ask you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do believe that there are more Americans, vastly more Americans, that believe as we do than as Trump and his followers do. The question is, can you get all of them who are available to A, believe it, and B, show up when it matters.
Well, I mean, part of the magical thinking is to think that that if Trump gets arrested or gets convicted, if he loses this election, this will all go away.
Yeah, but
And
that sounds like bargaining. It sounds like we're in the stages of grief here.
We
that's
are.
it. That's it. Those people, there are lots of people that you just described that are still in denial that this is happening in the country, that it can happen in America. After 250 years of being a democracy, they can't. It's what Stuart said. It's hard to imagine the unimaginable. It's unimaginable to many of them. This will go away. The country, the same. All of us who thought there's no way the country would elect Trump in 2016, or a ton of, some of us thought it was going to happen, but the whole country basically, And I just think that that's what's so crazy about this is after 8 years, almost 8 years, people still believe that. That's what the wake up call is really all about here, because that's the only way. I mean, they are motivated. The MAGA base is crazy, motivated,
Completely.
on fire because of the crack cocaine and the narcotics that Trump passes out that lets them be haters. I've seen it in focus groups too. It's unimaginable the things people are saying now in focus groups. I saw a group. Well, I can't get into it. It's just horrible. But we're same thing, racism, just full in the room. One guy got up and said, the reason I moved here is so I could be in rooms like this with people like you, which was just a room of white guys in the Republican Party that were still in the Republican Party. That scared the hell out of me. What really scared the hell out of me is that other 9 guys all jumped out of their chairs and said, yeah, people like us in rooms like this. That's the kind of stuff he's unleashing. And still people don't want to believe that. They don't want to believe that there's that many Americans who have bought into this hatred.
Right.
I think that's what. Yeah, but I think that's what we have to do to motivate. I mean, people. I still believe this, and very optimistic that you're right. That there's more people who will get up on in November and be motivated by the threat, not just the threat of Trump, but by the job that Biden has done and by wanting to preserve and protect the republic and our democracy. I believe we far outnumber them. But 2 things. I think they're getting crazier and more dangerous with the shutdowns and everything else that they're doing. I think, again, we've always known they were crazy. More people are learning how dangerous these people can be. And I think that, and the contrast with Biden and the job he's done and the economy, yes, there's some rough stuff going on, but it is getting better. The work that he's laid down is happening, and jobs are happening. And even the strikes, they're going to be, that will play out. And I just think in the end, there will be more people, but we got to do the work to make sure they know,
Absolutely,
to make sure they get out, and to make sure that we win this thing at the margins, because it's still going to be a tough fight, and it is going to be 15,000 people in this state or 40,000 people in another state. That's how close it's going to be. But there are more of us, and we can do the work to get them to get that win.
So, Stuart, we are not as professionals and as organizational people, we're not afraid to throw a punch. But there has to be. You have to tell the story too of a president like Joe Biden. So, how do you tell that story? Because the country's in a bad frickin' mood, right? In a bad mood. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, as Rick has said many times, when you have the right-wing media machine as the normative force in American information flow, I guess that makes sense. But how do you tell Joe Biden's story in a way that doesn't scare people off because Trump is so bad, although we should do that. We should at least illustrate that. How do you tell the Biden story in a way that says this is what's possible when he's reelected?
I've always thought the most effective way to deliver a positive message is with this election, you may lose something. And I think that that can be a very active dynamic that exists in this case. So, Trump is the first president to leave office with fewer jobs than when he took What are you going to lose with Donald Trump? Because it's just like with taxes, people never believe that they get a tax cut because somewhere in their life, prices have gone up.
That's
Even
right.
if you just show it to them, they'll never believe it. But they are willing to believe that the other person may raise taxes more. And I think that that's what this choice really has to be about. And I don't. I think the Biden people are good at this. I think Biden will be behind until the most optimistic would probably be the Democratic convention. But we are getting used to this minority rule, and we've had these two elections where the majority voted not for Trump, or plurality voted not for Trump. One, he still won. You could have
Right.
another. You have this on the Supreme Court now, where there's only 5 Supreme Court justices in the history of America that were confirmed with senators representing a minority of the country. And all 5 are on the court now. And this is something because of our demographics that is going to increase. Larger states, big states are getting bigger.
Right.
And they're not getting more senators, and they're not getting more electoral votes. So it's a real danger here that we reject this. And Republicans understand what's happening with the demographics, and it's why they're trying so desperately to change the fundamental rules of how we vote.
Right.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, listen, let's do this. Let's go around the horn. Give us something that you're looking at. Rick, we'll start with you.
I have got all eyes on the House right now. Kevin McCarthy is in deep, deep trouble. He dared the Republican crazy caucus to go crazy, and guess what? If you want them to go crazy on you, they'll happy to oblige. McCarthy's job is in danger. He's about to shut down the government, which is going to hurt America's economy, and it's gonna end up hurting him at the end of the day. Politically, it's going to make his majority much harder to hold. But if he doesn't do it, they're going to take him out of office. Here's what Kevin hasn't figured out yet. Even if he shuts the government down for Matt Gaetz and the rest of the crazies, they still may take him out of office because he took a suicide pill the minute he made a deal with them that would allow them to remove him if they got pissed off at him. And they're pissed off at him. They want the chaos. Watch the House. It's going to be amazing to watch. And watch how major donors to the House caucus behave when Kevin McCarthy's gone and they have to give their checks to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Joe, how about you?
Related to Rick, I'm looking at the 18 House members, Republican House members who preside in districts that Joe Biden won, and
Yeah.
what they all do in this schism that Rick's talking about. Because do they? I mean, they are either going to bail on McCarthy in a way, and the crazies to save themselves, and take and that's going to create one problem, or they're going to hang with the MAGA crowd and go down. And so I'm really watching. Those are the people I'm going to focus on as we watch what Rick's been describing.
And just on those for a second, Joe, you can see that some of them they always do this, guys, right? This is part and parcel of being a quote unquote normal Republican now, which is those that were anti impeachment are now scooting back toward impeachment, but they're
Right.
anti shutdown,
Right.
right? They want to split the baby again. This poor baby's sliced into a whole bunch of pieces, and it never works out, certainly for the baby or anybody else. And that's the thing is like, well, I'm not going to go. I think I'm politically okay probably with this impeachment because it probably doesn't go anywhere, right? But with the shutdown, like I got to go home and explain. Again, it's just the
But
nature of where we are.
But Reed, sooner or later, that impeachment is going to come to a vote. I mean, whether we go on to impeachment or not, they're just
Right.
kind of avoiding this for the current moment. But it's not going to be. They're not going to be able to avoid it. Those 18, I think, are really, rock and hard place between the crazies and actually doing what's right for the country, which is, is to keep the government open.
Well,
And not
look,
impeach it.
these are a bunch of guys and gals who keep going to the doctor. The doctor says, "I really think we need to take a closer look at that," and they keep saying, "Oh no, it's fine. It'll be fine." All right,
Right.
Stu, how about you?
I'm watching the UN. Arguably, the fate of the Western world is at stake here. It's clear now that Russia is holding on, hoping that a Republican will be elected president. Just wrap your mind around that. It's pretty unimaginable. It is more critical than ever that the West, and particularly led by America, give Ukrainians what they need to win this war. And Russia should not be on the UN Security Council. It's a genocidal rogue nation. Why have a country that is far worse than ISIS in the UN Security Council? And either the UN is going to adapt and become a functional, useful organization in the world, or it's just going to become even more of a joke than it is now. And I think that is very much up in the air.
Well, and I believe it's the UN Charter, right? Goes back to the 1940s. FDR, Winston Churchill, was dedicated in San Francisco, I believe, and all of the things that it said are not what China and Russia and others certainly want anything to do with. So, all right, look, yes, go ahead, Rick.
I had one more thing to make. This is
Sure.
a Resolute Square family issue. The last couple days, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio has been attacking our friend and fellow Resolute Square contributor Sarah Ashton Cirillo, who is on the ground in Ukraine, is a volunteer, an American volunteer in the Ukrainian armed forces, like many, many hundreds and thousands of other Americans who have gone over to serve in capacities from the front line to medical care to reconstruction. And J.D. Vance has been attacking her for the last several days in the most disgusting and horrible ways. And I'm going to tell you something to J.D. Vance, because I know his little minions listen to every word. They clip every word from his, because he's an egotistical maniac. So he'll see the name J.D. Vance somewhere in the transcript. J.D., Sarah served on the front lines. She was wounded in combat as a combat medic fighting the Russians. You have no fucking standing whatsoever to attack a person who is serving bravely, who is serving an ally of this country. You are a pathetic, low shitheel. That's what I have to say about J.D. Vance attacking Sarah Ashton Cirillo. And listen to the podcast, The Zero Line, because she's reporting directly from Ukraine, telling you the straight up story of this information war and this physical war that Russia is fighting in order to take over Ukraine. She's an important voice in this fight, and it's an important thing to call out the people like J.D. Vance when they try this kind of shit.
All right, well, I'm going to leave it there because I can't top that. So listen to that trippy show and follow Joe on social media. Listen to the list with Rick Wilson and follow Rick on social media. Listen to the Lincoln Project podcast. Follow all of us. And as always, follow Stuart on social media and all of his writings. He's on TV about 19 hours a day, so you can't swing a dead cat without hitting him. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Keep up the good work and the good fight, and we will see y'all next week.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.